Hello and welcome to the EFM Health Club podcast. My name is Justin Waring and today we will be discussing all things strength training. With me today is Jason Heshusius, all the way from Adelaide. How are you, Jace?
Great, thanks, Justin. How are you, mate?
Yeah, fantastic. And alongside Jace in the penthouse suite is Wade Brady. How are you, Wade?
Yes, good, thank you. G'day, fellas.
All right, let's get in. Well, before we get started, so the podcast obviously is able to be listened to forevermore, but in a more timely sense, things go on from week to week for us, and we are recording at the time of the AFL Grand Final, so it's a couple of days away. It's a thing obviously held down in Melbourne where all the Grand Finals are, but contested between the traditional powerhouses of Sydney and Brisbane. Not being a huge AFL tragic as the other two, I will defer to them in terms of how is this contest going to be won and lost, boys, and what do you think as to how the game's going to shape up?
I'm probably the most avid football supporter here. You've got me covered for basketball, Jace, but I will be cheering for Brisbane. So because my dad goes for Brisbane. He was Fitzroy Lions when he moved across to New Zealand, so he jumped on Fitzroy, and he's gone for the Lions ever since. So I'll be travelling back to Oyen to watch it with him. Lions by 16. I wasn't going to tell anyone, but now I've told everyone. It could really go either way, but Lions have been my pick all season. They were there last year. They got very close last year. So yeah.
Yeah.
And just
was it Fitzroy that moved to Brisbane? Is that how that worked?
Yep. That's
correct.
Yeah, they merged Fitzroy and Brisbane, and they kept the Lions. So it used to be the Brisbane Bears.
Yeah.
So they became the Brisbane Lions, and a little bit more history for people that don't really follow footy. Sydney were originally South Melbourne, and they were the Bloods, but they didn't carry the Bloods across to Sydney. Maybe
they were the South Melbourne Bloods.
They were the South Melbourne Bloods, and
Seriously?
South Melbourne relocated to Sydney and became the Sydney Swans.
Right.
So,
how do you come up with a nickname called the Bloods? Like, were they like a gang? Like what?
That's a good question. I don't know the history of that, but that is a good question.
Might be one for Wikipedia. Yeah.
Jason,
James,
what do you think will happen?
I'm expecting it to be a great game. I don't think either side is going to blow the other out of the water, which means it's anyone's game. Sydney was the best team for the first 15 rounds by far. Had a bit of a stumble in the third quarter of the season before riding the ship. Both sides look pretty good. Brisbane's without their ruckman. I slightly lean towards wanting Brisbane to win, but I don't really care. I'm picking Brisbane by 7 points in a cracking game, but who knows? Who knows? And we've got the two losing grand finalists from the last 2 years, so that's fascinating. Both teams are going to be hungry and after it. It's going to be a great game.
How does AFL country, South Australia, Victoria, feel about two interstate teams? Is it you just watch it and don't really care?
It's funny. I'm from country Victoria, and I've lived in Adelaide for quite a while. And it's just funny. I still consider myself a Victorian. I keep it quiet, but it's funny. People are like, I'm just glad there's no Victorian teams in it, and I just sort of smile. But it is what it is. There used to be a fierce rivalry between Victoria and SA. I'm glad it doesn't exist. It used to be really fierce and quite horrible, actually, years ago as a kid growing up, going from school in Victoria and SA, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. So still a bit there today. But with the modern game, I remember there was a stage where most of the Crows team was actually from Victoria, and my team, the Bulldogs in Melbourne, they had a lot of South Australians playing, so the borders are broken down a lot in a way. But I think it's good for football to have two interstate teams. It just spreads the interest further. And you being from Sydney, I'm sure you're on the local team this weekend.
Yes. Well, I mean, before the GWS came into the competition, there was only the one team, Sydney. So, I mean, I take a loose interest. There's only so much bandwidth I have in terms of watching sport. If I start watching another group of players chasing a ball, I'm going to get in serious trouble at home. So I have to really pick and choose when and how much I watch. So yeah, look, I'll watch, probably whilst doing something else, but I'll watch and obviously go for Sydney. And I don't know if there is a fierce rivalry between GWS and Sydney. I mean, there'd be a rivalry, but I don't think it is. So whoever wins out of the Sydney teams, I'm more than happy. So yeah, hopefully Sydney win it. I don't know. I actually don't know when the last time they won. Feels like a while though.
Well, I hope you're tuning in, Justin, and watch every minute.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if it keeps raining up here in Sydney as it is right now, well, I'll have nothing else to do. So that's what I shall be doing. All right, so boys, on to today's topic. So we've gone roughly through a couple of different topics relating to our health and fitness. And part of what we've spoken about is strength training. And so we thought we'd focus down on strength training specifically today. But not specifically what exercises you should do, how you should do it, technique-wise, because particularly technique's a little bit out of the realms of what we're able to do within a podcast setting. So what we thought we'd talk about today is, some of the elements, the variables of strength training, what the average person how it could benefit from them, but also what to look for, the reasons why you should do it, how you should do it. And so we'll delve deeply into some of these topics. But if we strip it right back to the basics, and Wade, I'll come to you first. In terms of strength training, to you, what does real strength look like? What should it look like in real terms to be strong as a result of doing some kind of, resistance training, where that resistance and strength training we'll use interchangeably. So doing some resistance training, what does strength in real terms essentially mean?
I'd say ability would be the first word that would come to my head. It just makes you more able in so many more ways in life. If you look at someone young, strong, fit in their 20s, they're able to do everything. As you get older, if you don't work on keeping your strength, you lose it. Particularly, it starts speeding up from 40 and dramatically falls away from 60, unless, of course, you're doing something about it. So, ability to just go on a holiday and you can say yes to everything. You can walk up that mountain. You can throw your luggage up there. You can, at home, you can open the jars. Like when these things are a real problem for some people. Ability, you could flip it the other way around and say, if you lose your ability, like a lot of people like break a bone and they're stuck on the couch 6 to 8 weeks, and then you realize when you lose your ability, it messes with your mental health severely. It's happened to me when I was younger. I'd broken both legs at separate times, when I was turned 18, when I turned 21. But
what I hear you saying, Wade, is being able to be an active participant in your life and not being held back by a lack of strength. So whether that's having to pick something up in the garage or lift something and move it, whether it's a box, we all experience moving house, something I've done recently. And if you don't have a basic amount of strength, then that makes life significantly harder for you in that way. So, you're talking about in a functional day-to-day way. Is that what I hear you getting at?
Yeah, it's part of it. Like
Yes.
independence. Like it's just good to be able to get stuff done yourself. Not have to call in someone or leave that until your neighbour gets home. Or then there's all the other things, like if you're stronger, you're going to be less likely to fall over because you've got better balance. If you do fall over, you're less likely to break because you're strong and your bones are stronger too. So the list just goes on and on. If you fall over, you're strong enough to get up. Like everything is affected. The more you think about it, the further it goes, the deeper it goes.
Yeah. So being strong will provide you like a quality of life as well. So in terms of when we're thinking about what we should be doing training wise and how that affects the body, is bigger better, right? Do we just keep trying to get bigger muscles all through? Is there a limit? What should we do? Do we just go, is biggest the best?
Yep. So it depends on what you want to be strong for. So strong can mean a number of things. If you go through your fitness course, you go through your training, strong, we're taught, is to be able to lift, I guess, the largest amount of weight for a single repetition. That's, I guess, the technical definition. But there's very rare instances in life where we need to lift our actual maximal load. So what is, comes back to what does being strong mean in real life? Do we need to be the biggest? Do we need to be ultimately the strongest? Is there a limit as to what's beneficial? Yeah, there probably is. So I guess to answer the question for each individual, though, Justin, it's a matter of working out what do you need from your life? How much strength do you need? Do you do more activities like gardening where you need a bit more muscular endurance, which to me is a type of strength? Or are you someone who does a lot of manual handling and you are going to be doing a lot of heavy lifting? Maybe you're a removalist. Maybe your job means you need to be injury free because you sit a lot and you need some postural strength. You need some strength through your upper back. You need to just get your glutes activated because they're so weak from sitting down for extended periods of time. So what's right and what's wrong is going to be so different from one person to the next. With that said, my recommendation is to be able to say, I can. So you alluded to it, Wade. If I'm going on holidays, someone asks me, do I want to do something? I can say, yes, I can. Whether that's a game of tennis, whether that's going for a hike, whether that's going to do a gym workout or whatever it is. So if someone asks me, can I come and help them move house? Yep, I can. Can you come and help me do this in the garage? Yes, I can. If I can't, it's because there's some sort of shortage in my own strength. So whether that's raw strength or whether that's muscular endurance or whether that's I have an injury because I haven't been doing any resistance training.
Yeah, so I think looking at it from, and what I think I'd like, and we'd all like to get out of today's episode is that if someone's listening and they're going, I've just listened to this strength training podcast. Beforehand, I didn't think it would be valid for me. Like I didn't really think I needed to do strength training because I don't want to look at myself in the mirror. I don't want to have to look. I'm not trying to grow big muscles. I think what we'd like to get out of this podcast is to convince that person now that I guess a lot of those stereotypical reasons people do strength training aren't the reasons you should get into it. Strength training is really for everybody and to enable a quality of life, and it involves a whole bunch of variables that you can either figure out on your own or get someone to help you with as you go through. I know I get the question a lot in that, okay, so someone comes into the gym for the first time and we start handing them some weights and some different techniques and different movements. Their first fear is, are they going to get injured? So Wade, if I'm really worried about getting injured by lifting weights and going to a gym and doing things, is that something that often happens under the correct guidance? Is it something people should be worried about?
Anyone can strength train. You've just got to start small. Like it's so simple. Like if I've had people they just want to put off a start with me because they just want to get stronger first. And to me, it's hard to adopt that perspective, but you've just got to reassure. And I've even had I've learned things from my members, like I've given people like quite light weights to go straight into a shoulder press. And I learned something many years ago that this lady hadn't done that movement for a while, so she just started with no weights and did that movement. Her intuition was bang on, and I learned something that day. So the weights go down quite small, and there's no race to increase your strength. No one's looking and judging. Gym environments are very encouraging environments. Everyone remembers where they started, and they know what they've got out of it, and they want other people to experience that as well. So I think that's why gym environments are so encouraging. But what I say to my best advice is consistency and good form are the only two things that really matter when you start. We worry about all these other things, like what we look like, how heavy we lift, how many did we finish the program. So, like, I suppose you go to school and it's all about passing tests, and we live in a world where it's all about success. You got to succeed and do things correct. Is that good? Did I do good? Did I do bad? It's really hard to remove all that, but it can be and should be removed. You just take the advice and lean on the experience of the trainer, and you'll be super safe.
Yeah. It's part, like, everyone's in part of their process, right? So they're along their and it's cliched, along their journey, and they're lifting and doing the exercises that they're able to do at that point in time. So we could do a whole rate. I think we probably need to do a podcast on the misconceptions of different exercises, because once we start talking and I start, my main goal of every podcast is to give the person who doesn't really exercise a lot and not quite sure what to do the correct perspective to take away. So it's very easy, I think, as a perspective for people when we say strength training, that you're laying on a bench in a gym underneath a big weight and someone's screaming at you to lift it. And that leads us into probably the next part of this conversation. We've covered off why we would do strength training, but some of the variables, Jason, I might come to you, the variables in strength training. So what should we kind of be aware of? What are the things we have to take into consideration when we start organizing ourselves to get stronger?
Sure. So some of the variables. So if we start with, I guess, what the goal is, if you're working towards, so if you're going to do 12 repetitions or more, that is going to gear you more towards muscular endurance. So that's the endurance of the muscles. There will be some muscular size increase when you're training for endurance. The higher you go in repetitions, the less that will be so. Muscular size doesn't mean you're going to go from looking like a marathon runner to looking like Mr. Olympia in a heartbeat. Between 6 and 12 repetitions is typically the range of repetitions that you would perform in order to try and increase muscle size, and 1 to 6 repetitions is where what is typically classed as strength training, and also where you would look at doing power-based training. So what does that all even mean? I guess those are just some of the outcomes that result from those types of training. But the other outcomes are, apart from muscular endurance, apart from strength and hypertrophy, better coordination, which is a better connection from the brain to the muscle, increased bone density, potentially as well, increased posture, stronger core. So these are some of the outcomes that are going to come if you can have a variety in your repetition ranges, definitely recommend starting out at the higher end of the repetition scale rather than going straight into heavy strength. And the reason for that being is that it's you need to start somewhere. You need to build your foundation. If you go straight into high intensity, higher effort lifts, that's going to come with a bit more risk. So I guess that gives some context to those variables.
Okay, so if we're going to do, say, between 6 and 12 repetitions, so 6 to 12 movements in any one direction,
Yes.
do we do it once? Do we do it twice? So 3 times seems to be common.
Three times is common. 2 might be where you start out probably for the first couple of weeks, just until you're getting into your rhythm. But 3 is generally where you land, somewhere between 3 and 5. But 3 is good. 3 probably allows you to get more different movements into your workout, which I think is great. Another one of the variables, if I'm doing all movements in one plane or in one direction, I'm going to end up with an unbalanced body. So I need to do some from all of our planes of movement throughout the course of a week. I need some push, I need some pull, I need some squat, lunge, hinge, rotate, and gait, which is going back to our 7 planes of movement. We discussed that in one of our earlier podcasts. Go back and listen to that one, folks. It's also the speed of movement as well. So slower movements are going to end up in greater muscle recruitment. So if you can imagine, within a muscle, you've got millions of fibers. If I fire quickly, I'm going to train a certain number of those fibers to fire with speed and power. But not as many of those fibers are going to fire, because not as many will be required due to the momentum that we generate. Whereas if we slow down the repetition, slowing down the repetition is going to require more control, more stability through the joints, and greater recruitment of the overall muscle. Not to say that's necessarily better, because some movements do require power. However, that's one of the variables. Am I training for power and speed, or am I training for overall muscle recruitment? Again, neither's wrong. I think a combination of both is great.
So if I've got an exercise, I've got my, let's say dumbbells, and I get to 12 and I really don't feel anything, and I just keep going. And I keep going and I keep going and I keep going until someone tells me to stop. Is that beneficial? Is that what should happen? What have I done wrong in that situation?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's not beneficial. I would say that if you've kept good form with what you're doing, then you're not doing any harm. It's just that the outcome is going to slightly change. So if you end up at 25 or 30 reps, and you're trying to add some muscle, then 25 to 30 reps probably isn't your best bet there, but you will have generated some muscular endurance, or that will be the response to that type of training, Justin. Mm-hmm. If you're saying, hey, I do want to add some muscle, then you're going to go, okay, that weight was very achievable for 12 repetitions. I need to get to the stage where maybe there's only 2 or 3 to spare. Yeah. If that makes sense, in order to engage that type of result. If it's your first session, you might not quite go to that level, but as the weeks go by, you're going to start to find what your limit is and start to go, hang on, by set number 3, I want to be struggling to complete my set, or by my final set, be struggling. That's going to induce a response. The nervous system says, this is more than what I'm capable of doing comfortably. And when I go to bed tonight, my nervous system is going to go about making the changes to improve based on the load that was provided. Does that kind of answer the question?
I think so. So basically, if I got to say, if we're going to do 12, if I get to say 9 or 10 and I'm starting to struggle a little bit and go, whoa, this is getting a bit heavy, that would be about right. I'll get to 12 and go, I kind of can't do too many more. That's, you know, where we want to live.
Yeah, I think it's the experience sort of looks after itself in a way. Like, the biggest danger people are to themselves are the ones that used to do it and they know how to push themselves. They have that mental strength and they have 10 years of MIA, and they come back and they know what they can do or what they could do, and they've got that mental know how to push and then they are so damn sore for weeks after. They might give it up again because they're like, oh, I don't want to be this sore again. But people that are really new, this whole phenomenon you're talking about of like what it should feel like when you get to the end of your set. In those first couple of weeks, we're definitely not trying to rep out. We don't want those last couple of reps to be super hard because you'll be super sore and it's very off-putting. Those initial few weeks, your muscles and your tendons are getting used to working, okay? So you've sort of got to give them a little apprenticeship at first, and then you just progressively, it's called progressive overload, like you can start slowly adding the weight, and then once you're a few weeks in, you can start thinking about, okay, now I want to be using a weight where the last couple of reps are starting to get difficult. And as you just gain experience over the years, or over the months, over the years, you do get more and more comfortable with that feeling and you get better at it. So, yeah, just building on a bit and expanding on what Jay said there.
That's
we don't want to be
really,
perfect.
you go.
We're not perfect from the get-go. It's kind of a little bit of a path. We've got to kind of build up a little bit as we go.
Yeah. It's building a brick wall. I like that analogy. Like you can only lay one brick a day, and like I'm sorry, you can't go and get strong in one day. So just get the foundation in place and get familiar and just put in the work. Be patient. It's hard to do in this modern world where we can get most things click of fingers. But yeah, over to you, Jace.
Yeah, just to go back and I guess add on to that. You were talking about getting to failure. You were talking about the person that comes back and can push themselves mentally. Technique is so important as far as doing it the right way. So if you start to lose form, you're not using the muscle you're intending to train anymore, and you're going to be using that muscle incorrectly. You're probably going to use momentum, But the bigger point is the muscle you were trying to train has fatigued, and so therefore the job's done. You don't need to keep trying to push to get those extra couple of reps out. This isn't a mental game. This is a physical game of following the rules. It's more important to stay on the track, so to speak, and be consistent than it is to, like Wade said, put 2 or 3 bricks in one day instead of one. We don't need to skip steps. Keep it simple. Yes, train with some intensity. However, your form has to be kept. If you can keep your form, if you can keep your program balanced, you go a long way towards building strength for the long term.
Yeah. So we've mentioned dumbbells there. So I'm new to a gym. I walk in and I've got written a program, but it's been given to me, and people have shown me. I look around the gym and there are so many different options. There's all these different machines. There's some bars. There's some dumbbells. I see people doing stuff on a floor. There's such a variety of things. I guess that the question needs to be asked as to why. Like, what are they all for? Are they all as good as one another? Like, for the average person, what does all that mean, and is it useful?
Great question. They all have their place, is my take on that, Justin. So your machines tend to be more controlled, give you a guided range of motion that require less stability and coordination. They are definitely a great place to start, because you can start setting the neural pathways while giving your muscles some stimulus, generate some strength, start getting used to the motions, where dumbbells and barbells and then body weight based activities, more complex movements start to introduce elements of instability that will challenge your coordination, will challenge your the stability and the strength of your, not just your muscles but your joints. So the more instability gets introduced, obviously the more advanced the exercise becomes. You'll start to know when you're capable. You'll start to try these exercises under a lighter load. Hang on, I can actually handle that. The let's try that with a little more weight. Or, yes, I can handle that. I can perform that exercise really well. What's the next progression from there? Most exercises in some way, shape, or form can be progressed from machine-based through to much less stability through dumbbells and other pieces of equipment. So again, having a coach on hand to be able to take you through that is helpful. It's not necessarily, I don't think, something to worry about. Everyone should start somewhere. But to answer your question, yes, there is a place for all of them. And they can all be part of a strength training program for sure.
Yeah, I think it's funny when you talk about machines. I don't know if I've ever thought about it like this before, but machines are good for beginners and bodybuilders, which might sound strange. But what was the last thing you said before I interrupted myself? Lost my train of thought. I'm sure Justin's got another great question in store for us there. Or we're getting out of time nearly.
Yeah, well, so I guess that leads me on to another variable that I've been thinking about as we've been going along, the different types of exercise. So we've been speaking about machines there. Most of them create a very isolated movement, right? So we're working one muscle at a time in a kind of a single plane of movement, and really, so if we're on a leg extension machine, we move the joint in one motion, so the leg comes up to straight, bends again. So we're working one muscle. The other option we have is some compound movements, so the compound movement should provide the basis of a good strength program, because it makes your body moving not only just different types of planes, but engage different muscles as we go. So examples of a compound movement might be a squat or a lunge, where our body is recruiting different joints and different muscles around different joints, so that we get a more of a whole body movement, which also then mimics more like how the body will work in day-to-day life. So we spoke originally about how the strength is about how you move your body and have a good quality of life. So doing more compound movements will provide a really good basis for a strength program. And we also have this other option of an isolated movement. And Wade, you said they're really good for bodybuilders. So when a bodybuilder wants to build a specific muscle to look really good in a show, they will go and isolate that muscle in a specific, say, machine environment. So they're another set of variables on top of all the other ones that we've already spoken about that provide, I guess, the overall concept of what strength training is, and also what it provides. I guess my last, sorry, Wade.
I was just going to say, I remember what I was going to say, and it was right on point with the next bit you went to there. You could say there's a lot of fluff. Like, as Justin said, there is a place for everything. But I suppose it might come down to efficiency. Like if you don't want to spend hours in the gym, but you want to work everything, these compound movements you speak of, get everything involved. You get more done in your time. But the thing is, what you're up against is they're harder. And but if you get good at the hard ones, then the easy ones become so much easier. But I like what Jason said. Like that can be a good place to start on the machines to get used to the feeling of exertion and building upon that. But I would say a lot of it is, and the function. Just a quick example is if you sit in a seated chest press, you're sitting down like you do at work all day, and you grab the handles and you just push the thing. You're never going to be in that situation in your garden when you're moving wheelbarrows and stuff around. Like it's sort of like I like this analogy in footy for footy strength. Like you can get strong on the bench press, but if you're standing beside your man and you go to push off him, you don't have a bench behind your back. So you're going to need strong legs and core to be able to push him away from you. So just to give a little bit more, expand a little bit more on like thinking about the actual exercises and making them more, I suppose, functional.
Yeah. So it gets to the point, and then the direction that we're heading, where we start is one thing, but where we're heading is towards functional movements. That's where we want to get to be able to perform as many different functional movements as possible, perform them well, perform them with strength and stability, because that is going to build what we believe strength to be, so that you can do those day-to-day movements, as you just said, Wade. We didn't touch on heavily the specific benefits, like you're going to improve your metabolism because your metabolism stays up for a couple of days after lifting weights. Your body has a lot of repair work to get done after a good strength session, and therefore there's more energy that gets burned. Once you've built a little more muscle, that muscle requires more energy just to stay alive. So all of a sudden your base metabolic rate, that's the amount of energy you're burning just being alive, increases when you retain a little more muscle. That helps with maintaining or losing weight, keeping body fat under control. We talked a little bit about bone density. We talked a little bit about coordination, but it's injury prevention and these sorts of things as well, so that you do have the strength to perform your day-to-day tasks, and not just perform them, but get up the next day and not have those aches and pains that you get when you try and do 5 hours of gardening without having done any conditioning work prior. So there are so many benefits, and some we haven't even touched on. Strength and conditioning of your tendons, not just your muscles. Your tendons is, I guess, the tissue that connects your muscle to your bones. With strength training, they get stronger, they get more conditioned. Again, it's guarding against injury, not just now, but for 10, 20, 30, 40 years' time.
Yeah. So, all right, so we're going to wrap this up, boys. Our recommendations to the person who hasn't done any strength training, thinks that they probably should, hadn't really considered it before in any of those camps. Number one, don't be scared of it. It's the common misconceptions around what strength training is and why you would do it are misconceptions. So we're doing it for the benefit of our overall health, our longevity, and more importantly, the quality of life as we go through. We want to be able to do things. We want to be able to act and move and play in the ways that we want to, without limitations stemming from muscle imbalances or injuries. We need to consider different types of repetition ranges and sets. Start slowly, build yourself up, which means, so if we go a little bit lighter, kind of hit those like higher repetition ranges, give yourself a bit of a buffer for how many repetitions you would do, so that you're not completely exhausted at the end of the number that you set out to do in the beginning. Roughly do about 3 sets of each exercise. Include different types of movements. So one where we might isolate the muscle to get a particular outcome for a specific muscle, and then incorporate functional movements, which means more compounding movements. So different sets of muscles, two joints moving, a little bit more complicated, will get you a little bit more out of breath, because you're recruiting larger muscles and more muscles as you go. So will be more difficult, more challenging. So we probably don't need too much weight involved in that as we go. Use as many different things in the gym as you can see. Don't be scared of them. They all have a purpose. And understanding the purpose of each type of either machine or dumbbell or barbell, your own body weight, they all have a function and a purpose, and some will be harder than others, and they will all be incorporated into what is a good strength program that'll allow you to get a little stronger. Probably won't develop you into a bodybuilder if that's not what you want, but if that it is what you want, then you will be able to use all of these elements to get there. So these are the foundational elements of strength training that can lead you through your life. Did I miss anything there in that summary, boys?
No, I think you pretty much nailed it, Justin. You're on track.
Yeah.
One thing, I reckon the best benefit of all this, which I see every day, is just the confidence people have when they regain their strength. And for me, that's the best part of my job satisfaction, just watching people, their smile, and they realize, wow, I did that. It's very empowering.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Well, that might do us, boys, for today. Good discussion as always. If you have listened to this podcast and you like it, well, even if you don't like it, please follow on your specific podcast player that you use. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You'll find us on YouTube, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify. We're all there. Please leave a review. Any feedback that you'd like to give us, either positive or negative, would be helpful for us. So please subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you'll know when the podcast comes out immediately. That might do us, boys. That is the EFM Health Club podcast. Have a great week, and we will see you soon.
Go the Lions. Have a good weekend, boys.
See ya.